Welcome back, everyone. Today's lesson is called Buggy Dinner. Remember in our last lesson what we learned about soil formation? Well, today we'll think about how soil quality affects habitat for insects. Beside building on our knowledge of soil, we'll learn about what plants and animals need to survive, including what habitat is best for them. We will also learn the difference between beneficial insects and pests. I hope you have your garden journal ready to take some notes, because we're about to jump into the vocab. Our first word is beneficial insects. Beneficial insects help us perform our gardening tasks like pollination and pest control. Here's an example of a pollinator we all know. That's a bee doing his job to pollinate our flowers so we can get lovely fruit from our plants. Now, pests, on the other hand, are bugs that can carry disease, cause disease, or destroy plants. An example of a pest is an aphid. You can see them in this picture as those tiny little green bugs that are covering the plant. Aphids will eat our plants, and they will also make the plant really sick by covering it up so thickly. But also in this picture, we see a beneficial insect, a ladybug, which is helping to eat the aphids, which will help to keep their population small enough that the plant can stay healthy. Our next word is experiment. An experiment is a test to find something out, or to test a prediction. We use experiments in science to make scientific discoveries. We can do all sorts of fun experiments in the garden. Let's think about a few things we might need if we were going to build our own experiment. The first thing you need is a control. The control is the part of the experiment that remains the same throughout the experiment. The variable of the experiment would be the things that are changing. Let's think about an experiment we could do with ladybugs and aphids. If we wanted to see if ladybugs really help to get rid of aphids, we could do an experiment where the control would be that every plant has aphids. It's the same throughout. Our variable would be if there were ladybugs. So we could put ladybugs on some plants as a variable and see what effect they have. Our last vocab word is habitat. A habitat is a place where plant or animals live, and it provides food, water, and shelter for them. There are all sorts of different habitats. Some animals live in the water, some live high in trees, and some make burrows for themselves. Most insects either live inside plant matter or they live inside the soil. Let's think for a second what kind of habitat might be best for different bugs. A big bug like a beetle might need a soil with large rocks in it so he can hide and live under the rocks. He also might want to be near a source of water or plants that he can eat. What about a teeny tiny bug? Maybe that bug, like an aphid, could live on a leaf its whole life and have enough water and food and places to hide. You all did such a great job of listening. Thanks so much. It's time for you to hear from your garden teacher now. Hi again, it's Evie in the garden. Today's lesson was Buggy Dinner, and we are going to go explore in the garden, see what bugs we can find, maybe try and figure out what they've been eating, and we're also going to try and catch some bugs if we can, and I'll collect some food for them so hopefully they're happy inside this little home, at least for a few hours, so we can get a closer look at them. I don't know if I'll have any luck catching them. You guys are probably a lot better at that than me, but we're going to try. So the first place I started looking for bugs was here at this plant. I noticed earlier today that this plant looks super duper sad. It's clearly getting totally eaten up, and it's not really making any cabbage. It's supposed to be a cabbage plant because it's just not very healthy because it's getting attacked by these insects. So let's see what's doing the damage. First thing I found were these aphids, and they are slowly eating away at this plant. There's more here. But I noticed that in here you can see there's little brown dots, and those are actually poop of a caterpillar. So there's got to be a caterpillar in here somewhere. But what I ended up finding was this creepy guy, which I have to be careful. I hope you can see him. Can you see him? He's a pincher bug. So I do not want to get pinched by him. But there he is, hiding and eating. What about that? Oh, there it is! Yes! I found the caterpillar for you. And so that is what is making all that poop. And so this poor plant has a whole zoo of bugs living on it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little nibble of this cabbage here, and I'm going to pick off that caterpillar and give it a new home because I don't really want it eating the rest of this plant. So this little guy is in his new home. You guys can get a closer look at him. And I noticed too, when I picked that leaf off, there's actually a little tiny one on the other side. So you can kind of see they start out really tiny and then they get a lot bigger. And as we know, caterpillars will become moths or butterflies. This one I think is the infamous cabbage moth, which is a pest and turns into a white moth. So the pincher bug that I showed you, that is a carnivore. And I wanted to give you a closer look, but he was super hard to catch and I was afraid of getting pinched, so I don't have him for a closer look. But remember that a carnivore is something that eats only other animals or insects or meat. So that pincher bug only eats other little insects, so he was probably in there waiting to hunt one of those little caterpillars. And they're a little bit of a spooky insect, but they are kind of cool. Now here's two of the teeniest, tiniest little caterpillars you've ever seen, and you might recognize them. Those are the same ones from before. Those are going to be cabbage moths. So I'm going to take them off of this plant in a minute, but I wanted to mention that these caterpillars are herbivores, which means that they only eat plants. So while they're staying on this leaf, they can get everything that they need. So they only eat these cabbage leaves and they never eat meat or other insects. The next bug that I caught is an ant, and you can see him moving around there right by the edge. He's kind of blending into the soil right now, but you'll probably see him popping in and out of the soil. And ants are omnivores. And remember, omnivores are insects or animals that can eat both plants and animals. So ants can eat bits of plants, or they can eat bits of meat or other animals or insects that are smaller than them. And you might know that just instinctually because if you've ever been at a picnic, ants do not care what they're eating. They will eat your whole sandwich, the veggies, the meat, they will eat it all. So we talked about herbivores, things that only eat plants, carnivores, things that only eat meat or other bugs. We talked about omnivores, which eat both plants and animals. What else is left? I have a bonus one for you, and that is a detritivore. And what that means is that it only eats dead things. So I don't know if you can think of any examples. You might think of a vulture, that's a detritivore. But what about in the bug kingdom? I'm going to show you one. That's right. our worms. So our worms only eat dead things, and they help to break down those dead things, and they do an awesome job. That's all I have for you here in the garden, but what I want you guys to do with your parents at some point this week is head outside, see what bugs you can find, and think about what they might eat for dinner. So think about if they're an herbivore, a carnivore, an omnivore, or a detritivore. And you guys can do that little activity together, and I will see you next time. Thank you. Let's see what you learned. Try and answer all these questions in your garden journal. You can pause to read them all.